I see a few new faces, so hello, welcome. So, as Emmanuel said, this talk is about the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Does anyone really know what that is? Like, raise a hand if you're like you confidently know what that's about. Raise your hand if you think you have like an idea of what it's about. Okay, we got three, four, five. Okay, we got five people at least. Before this talk, like many of my talks, I had no idea what it was about. Honestly, like every single time Emmanuel comes to me and says, like, "Hey, can you give a talk on this?" I'm like, "Sure," but I have no idea. But that's also why I like doing them because it's fun to learn about our faith, right? So, Sacred Heart of Jesus, what is that? Some of you, like I did at first, are assuming it just refers to the unending love and grace of Jesus that he has for each and every single one of us, which is true, partially, because it's more than that. It's not just about it. It's a symbol of a major truth in our life that we know as a truth in our Catholic faith that is very often overlooked because we don't take it seriously enough and just kind of glides over our heads. The same way, like we don't take the Mass seriously enough every now and then because, happens every Sunday and it just feels like a whatever chore, right? But in 1673, St. Margaret Mary, a French visitation nun, received several visions of Jesus, one of the most prominent being the revealing of his Sacred Heart, which I will draw for you guys right now. You've probably seen the image before. It's a very famous image, but it is his exposed heart, right, with a crown of thorns going across it, often with the wound from the spear that was lodged into his side, some flames going on at the top, right, and then a cross all the way at the top, right? You guys have seen that image before, right? It's pretty recognizable. Move out this side for it. So this image was the image that she was presented with by Jesus himself. Obviously, a lot more detailed and a lot better looking than that. But for me, especially looking at it from like an artistic view and like a symbolic view, it's something really beautiful and really powerful because this symbol of the exposed heart shows again the wound from his side, the crown of thorns that he wore, the flames on top symbolizing the burning passion that he has for each and every single one of us, and the cross all the way at the top that serves as the reminder of his ultimate passion and sacrifice that he gave to us, when he died on the cross for our salvation. Um, and again, it's really important because it's a symbol of love that shows the both humanity and divinity of Jesus, right? The humanity obviously being the human heart, which humans have, right? But also the flames on the top, symbolizing his divinity, which in a lot of artistic pieces, flames have been used to symbolize, divinity and purity, flames that purify, right? Not just that, it shows its woundedness and mercifulness because the cross being merciful in our own shortcomings and bringing us salvation and doing so wounded through the crown of thorns that Jesus puts on, which symbolizes the curse of Adam that he took on, being the thorns that grew from the ground when, the fall of man happened. So again, it's a huge symbol with a lot of symbolism, but it's not just a cool symbol just to represent Jesus. It's more than that. There's four major reasons why we, as Catholics, should venerate the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Not just the image, but the Sacred Heart itself. First, to acknowledge the immense love and suffering for the salvation of humanity. Again, we already said it, passion on the cross, right? But secondly, to offer back love, trust, and reparation in return for that mercy that he bestowed upon us when he died on the cross. He's God. He didn't have to do that in any way, shape, or form. That's the whole, agony in the garden, right? May this chalice pass from me if it be your will, right? That's what he asks because his humanity is afraid and frightened, And more than that, he really ultimately doesn't have to do it because truthfully, we don't really matter in the grand scheme to him because we don't directly affect him, right? But he does so because he loves us so much. So he does that sacrifice either way. And that's why we should go back with, trust and love towards him for that sacrifice. Thirdly, to unite ourselves with the mission of Christ of redemption and mercy, right? He calls us to be redeemed and not just that, but to redeem others and to have mercy on others, around us, to help bring other people and other souls up to heaven. And fourth, and probably most importantly, for us to be able to find both spiritual strength and comfort in our times of trial and suffering. You know, all the other things I just said is very true. But on top of that, Jesus gives us this heart to remind us that he's there for us in our smallest and largest trials. Every little thing that happens to us matters so much to him and his heart. And it really doesn't make sense since he's an omnipotent God, right? But that's the mercy and the mystery of his love that we're called to learn more about, right? So ultimately, this devotion is for us to enter deeper into this relationship with Jesus, to not just know what he did for us in that he died for us on the cross, but to better understand what it took to have that passion and grace, the grace that is in his sacred heart, right? One of the most intimate things that we as humans do with another person is to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to open up our hearts with someone else. Think of your parents, loved one, a family member that you can confide in a lot, or a partner that you confide in a lot, right? You love them not just because you feel great with them, or you have a good time with them. You have that love for them because you can be with them intimately. You can open up your heart and be vulnerable to them. They can know the things that make you afraid or scared, but they also know the things that you're passionate about, right? And again, that's the most vulnerable thing we can do because we're allowing ourselves to be hurt from that person. And Jesus wants to do the same thing with us. And ultimately, that's what he's calling with the Sacred Heart, with showing St. Margaret Mary the vision of that, so that we can enter more deeply into the vulnerability that he's giving to us. So how do we venerate ourselves, right? Do we just pray to the image? Because Jesus isn't just an image, he's around us. So there's two major ways. One, there's the first 9 Fridays devotion. This is a devotion in which you are called to receive communion on the first Friday of 9 consecutive months and reparation to his heart. Again, we are very undeserving of, the mercy he bestows onto us, but this is one way that we can give back to him in that way, right? This devotion is especially powerful too, because when Saint Margaret Mary received the vision of the heart, Jesus made 12 promises to her. These promises he gave were as follows. He said to St. Margaret Mary, "To those who honor his heart faithfully, 1, I will give them all the graces necessary in their state of life. 2, I will establish peace in their homes. 3, I will comfort them in all of their afflictions. 4, I will be their secure refuge during life and above all in death. 5, I will bestow abundant blessings upon all their undertakings. 6, sinners will find in my heart the source and infinite ocean of mercy. 7, lukewarm souls shall become fervent. 8, fervent souls shall quickly mount to high perfection. 9, I will bless every place in which an image of my heart is exposed and honored. 10, I will give to priests the gift of touching the most hardened hearts. 11, those who shall promote this devotion shall have their names written in my heart. And 12, I promise you, in the excessive mercy of my heart, that my all-powerful love will grant to all those who receive Holy Communion on the first Fridays in 9 consecutive months the grace of final perseverance. They shall not die in my disgrace, nor without receiving their sacraments. My divine heart shall be their safe refuge in their last moment." Very, very powerful words and very powerful promises that he gives for just going to Mass, on the first Friday of 9 months, receiving communion. There's also, more powerfully too, the litany of the Sacred Heart, to meditate on the love of Jesus. I will not say it now because we are going to pray it later, and it's very long. But it's a meditation consisting of 33 invocations with honor to the different aspects of Jesus' love. This litany can be prayed at any time. Prayer is not dependent on a time or place, but it is most meaningful on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, which is on June 12th. During the first 9 Fridays devotion, so every time you go to Mass, if you're doing that devotion, in Eucharistic adoration, whenever you can be in adoration, during times of personal suffering, spiritual dryness, or trials, or as daily prayer. That second to last one really kind of does stick with me because ultimately that's what God kind of gives us. And again, I've already kind of mentioned it, but God is omnipotent and he doesn't have to do any of this. And that's always been the most confusing thing for me in my faith, right? Because again, why would he do any of this? But it's really powerful and really showing of his love that, he calls us to pray this litany, to look upon, his exposed heart during just our own times of like spiritual dryness, for example. How many of you guys have been in that rut where you're like, man, I haven't prayed every morning in a while, I haven't done a rosary in like a month, you know? Things like that. It's like I haven't opened my Bible in like days, I'm only opening it right now because I'm going to a Bible study, or I'm only really thinking of God because it's Sunday again, you know? And it kind of feels like, man, I'm not really a Catholic. You feel like a hypocrite for a second, right? But God doesn't call us to be ashamed of that. He calls us to fight that, to pray upon his heart, to call upon his name in our time of need, right? And especially in that, what it's saying here, in our own personal sufferings and trials. Because again, like I've already said before, none of our sufferings, of what is like heavy in our hearts, of what's really taking away our peace is ever too small or too insignificant or too immature to be seen by God, because he's there for everyone that's there with him. He's there for all those that he saved, which is everybody, whether they know it or not, whether they believe it or not, whether they want it or not. So again, I give you guys all this information not to, just so you know, right? Take it seriously. Look into that devotional. I want to start that devotional too. After doing this whole research, it got me fired up, and I hope it has you guys fired up too. Because I've always seen that image and never really thought twice of it now. And now I'm going to be thinking about it more than just twice. So, thank you.